Hello Momodou, it's really lovely to have you here on the sofa. We haven't met before, but my name's Esther and I'm the Deputy Director of Youth Work for the National Youth Agency. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. I just wondered if you wanted to tell us and the audience out there a little bit about yourself and your career to date.
Thank you very much, Esther. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Momodou Sallah, and I am a professor of teaching and learning at Commonwealth University, where I've been teaching for the past 18 years. I am also a scholar activist in that I'm interested not only in the production of knowledge, but also in activism and how that is applied to change the lives of people for social good. So that's likely me, yes.
Well, it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Yesterday you did a talk and when you addressed the plenary, and it was a really interesting talk, and I've been fortunate enough to have a listen to it. Can you tell us a little bit about what, sort of those main themes that you were picking up on in that discussion?
I wanted to advance a pedagogy of disruption, and my talk culminated in the pedagogy of disruption. But before getting there, I had to go through the challenges of youth. So there are ways in which youth work should respond to these challenges. For example, for those who are not in formal education or engaging with the education system, how does youth work provide alternative spaces that can adequately engage with these young people all over the world? So there are many challenges, and then from there I've looked at the fact that youth work continues to engage with the personal and the cultural, and as Althusser would argue again, around the soft core issues of society and the media and the church and all of these softer versions as opposed to the hardcore stuff. So that is what I talked about, and I ended with a very a rallying call for us to reimagine and to advance a pedagogy of disruption. In terms of where I have been, I've been a youth worker. I was born in the Gambia, spent the first half of my life in the Gambia, and then I moved to the UK, and I've spent literally half of my life in the Gambia and half of my life in the UK now. 18 years ago, I started teaching at Commonwealth University. So I used to teach on the BA and the MA programs. So from being a module leader to program leader to head of department. And now I am also the director of the Center for Academic Innovation for Commonwealth University. It works with staff and students across the university, but also I retain my academic interest and as a professor of teaching and learning. And I've done a lot of work in terms of publication around working with difference and diversity.
You've spoken about your career, you've spoken about the first half of your life working, growing up in the Gambia, the second half of your life to date, so being here in the UK. You've also spoken about delivery of youth work practice in both Africa and in the UK. What are the similarities and differences in terms of youth work practice, in your opinion, when you're delivering youth work in Africa or delivering youth work over here?
My work revolves around the personal and social development of young people. And as Kerry Young said, to support young people to ask the central question of self, of who am I, what is my purpose, what kind of society do you want to live in. So that is something that I've been able to do. But also you find that from time immemorial, youth work has also been used for benevolent purposes and to keep the vagrant young people off the streets. Whilst in my work in the Gambia and other places in Africa or in the South, it's a lot to do with youth work has a central purpose of engaging the young people and also likely towards addressing development needs. There's an engagement with the personal and social development of young people, but there is a clearer motive of addressing something that is dysfunctional. So that has been my experience in terms of engaging young people around particular issues. So that, from a very Western perspective, might not look like youth work, but in my understanding, it was youth work. And that's why in my talk yesterday, I talked about how we actually work on decolonizing ways of knowing and ways of being, because youth work is so diverse. And the whole notion of disruptive pedagogy or pedagogy of disruption is to recognize the many different spaces and shapes and contents and form that youth work happens. So whether there is a very fixed curriculum, whether there is a looser curriculum that responds to the needs of the people, I think I've encountered some of these things in both the North and the South.
Is there still an asset-based approach to youth work available, in your opinion, in both parts, or are we purely focused on a deficit approach to youth work delivery?
In a lot of my work, I play around with this notion of relative distance, and I guess when it comes to youth work and how it is structured, the question becomes: these issues, are they so immediate that they're the first thing to think about without even thinking about the deficit model, but they're just so present and so omnipotent that they have to be engaged with? The other end of the continuum is to think of youth work as from a purist perspective, which is like we negotiate with the young people what they want to do, how they want to do it, and what issues are important to them. Last Bernard Davis would say again, to start metaphorically and literally from their experiences and to build that. Whether that is possible, because youth work is not what it used to be. Because if the voluntary principle is what defines youth work, the voluntary principle is not sacrosanct in all of these contexts anymore, because it for funding to be secured, for funders and for politicians, if youth work is not responding to these things, then why should we fund it? So can you be purist? And there have been lots of debates in your approach to just doing things or having a curriculum that is very, very broad, but that speaks to the imaginations of the youth workers working with the young people. And I think every situation requires a different recalibration.
Who is a curriculum for? What is a national youth work curriculum for? And who does it benefit the most?
Some people see it as like a constitution that they have to obey, or they will not be doing good youth work. That actually can cause more resistance. But if it is seen as a guiding document that supports the work, I think the story on it, it's important. The narrative around it is important. I like to have guidance in my practice. I like to have a framework that I'm working with, and I welcome that. Another perspective, though, might be that the context of youth work and the different spaces in which youth work happens, detached youth work, center-based youth work, outreach youth work, in secure estates, in the streets, in all these other spaces. A uniform curriculum does not always respond to all these particular unique situations. And I think it's about having that kind of dialogue, but having a reference point that actually people can look at and kind of like have ideas, have direction, I think that's good. I think some some are scared by that bit about thou shall reach this number of people, thou shall, engage with this number of people, and we calculate the numbers of people, and then, so I think that kind of approach, might scare some people when it comes to the curriculum. But if it is a document that guides, that supports, and it is pinned like that, then I think you will have less resistance.
So maybe it's a question about accessibility and being able to work with the different audiences in sort of working with them to learn how they are going to use this framework.
Absolutely. Because sometimes it's like, if it is seen as something that is externally imposed, then the resistance will kick in. But if it is something as a co-produced stuff that people can be supported to question, to challenge, to adapt.
In your opinion, Momodou, what do you think young people can get from a youth work curriculum?
You've got exceptional youth workers. Most youth workers are exceptional. They know their stuff, they're committed, but there's some youth workers who are still developing and they need support, they need clarity, and when they close their eyes and look at what the end looks like, that curriculum allows them to do that.
If you could give any advice to aspiring youth workers of the future, what would that be? I
think flexibility is important. That youth work is an evolving, dynamic process and profession, and I think be willing to adapt. But the whole pedagogy of disruption that I advance is also about that being able to adapt.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
The pleasure's been all mine, Esther. Thank you.